have loved Peter Miles for 10 years. From my youth to my old age, I have killed for him, been to jail, and even become crippled in both legs to protect him. On the wedding day, he said in front of everyone that he would never let me down in his life. But today, many years later, he used my stump as a topic of conversation, his tone full of disgust. You have no idea how disgusting that severed limb is. I guarantee you won't be able to eat after seeing it. But Peter, it was because of you that I lost my legs. 01. Peter's 30th birthday party was a grand occasion, with almost all the important figures in City A coming. A beam of light shone down from the center of the stage, and he and I kissed in front of the packed house. Peter's eyes were so gentle that they could drown me. He knelt on one knee and took out a diamond ring from his pocket. It was the pink diamond ring that I saw in the magazine last time. It was a standard cushion-cut diamond and was called a shining star by a famous jewelry critic. It was worth a lot of money. I was a little surprised. It's so expensive, you. But Peter didn't give me a chance to hesitate. He put the ring on me and left a kiss on my fingertips. You're worth it. Peter's friends in the audience cheered. One more kiss. Peter laughed and scolded them, then gave me an expectant look. Is it okay? I lowered my head shyly and said, okay. Peter then restrained himself and kissed my lips, then put his arm around my waist and greeted the others. Sister-in-law, what are you going to give Peter for his birthday? I prepared a diamond tie clip for Peter, which was also quite expensive. I felt very painful when paying for it, but compared with the gift Peter gave me, it was really insignificant. Thinking of this, I felt guilty towards Peter again. It was obviously his birthday, and not only was my gift not good enough, but he also gave me a more precious surprise. I'm sorry, I didn't expect you to give me such an expensive gift. I prepared it. I hesitated whether to take out the gift, but Peter held my hand and said gently, I like anything you give me. You are the best gift God has given me. Without you, there would be no me. Everyone started to make a fuss again. It's so sweet, I can't handle it. Feed us dog food, huh? That's so corny. I suddenly felt my cheeks getting hot and the temperature rose a lot. Only under Peter's gaze did I take out my tie clip. Peter didn't show any disgust on his face. Instead, he put it on the spot and showed it off to his friends. Your sister-in-law has good taste. Seeing Peter's satisfied expression, I became happy too. I'm going to the bathroom, I whispered to Peter. Peter nodded and asked again, can you find the way? Do you need me to accompany you? Before he could finish, Peter's good friend Gavin interrupted him. You two won't die if you separate, why do you have to stick together? I was a little embarrassed. It's okay, I'll go by myself. When we walked out of the private room, I felt the heat on my face fade away a little, and I felt that Peter was too good to me. They have been married for several years, but they seem to be still in love. I took a few steps towards the bathroom and realized I had forgotten my handbag, so I was about to go back to the private room to get it. The door was half open and there was a lot of noise in the room, but for some reason Gavin's voice stood out. You're really good at pretending. You're so disgusted with each other. Yet you can still pretend to be so affectionate. Peter, you're amazing. I was still a little confused and didn't understand what he meant. And then I heard Peter speak. What can I do if I feel sick? I have to endure it, otherwise the old man at home will blame me again. Peter paused for a moment as if he had taken a sip of wine and mumbled, to be honest, that severed limb is really disgusting. You have no idea how disgusting it is. Gavin was curious. Is it true? Take a picture and show it to me someday. Peter chuckled. I guarantee you won't be able to eat after watching this. I stood at the door and felt the temperature of my whole body disappearing little by little, until my limbs were almost numb from the cold. I mechanically lowered my head and looked at the long skirt on my legs, which was specially chosen for me by Peter before I went out. He said the temperature has dropped recently and wearing a long skirt would keep me warmer. Otherwise he would be sad if I caught a cold. It turns out that he doesn't really feel sorry for me. Instead, I felt that my severed limb was disgusting and wanted to cover up my prosthetic limb as well. Turn out to be. Peter disgusts me so much. 02. I am an orphan and was abducted by human traffickers when I was young. Because I was honest and decent, the traffickers asked me to recognize them as my godparents and take care of them in their old age. When I was 10 years old, they kidnapped a pampered young master. That's Peter. Peter is obviously a child from a wealthy family. He has never done any housework. When he was abducted to a strange environment, he just cried. When he was tired of crying, he fell asleep, and when he woke up, he continued crying. His godfather was troubled by him and wanted to sell him to the mountains. It was because I knelt down in front of my godfather and godmother and promised to steal Peter's share of the money as well that they agreed to keep him. We spent 6 difficult but supportive years together. Even if they were hungry and cold, the only way to make money was to steal on the streets. But 2 people can barely keep warm by snuggling together. When he was 16, Peter became more and more disobedient and would often go against his godfather. He is tall and looks like an adult, and even his godfather is a little scared of him when he gets angry. Godfather became more and more afraid of Peter, and discussed with godmother to kill Peter once and for all. In order to protect Peter, I accidentally killed my godfather while trying to grab the knife. Peter took me, who was terrified, and ran away, but we encountered a car accident on the way. At the critical moment, I used my last breath to push Peter out, but ended up with both legs crippled. That year, the wind in city it was bitingly cold. I came out of the prison alone, feeling that I had lived enough in this life and might as well die. But when he turned around, he saw Peter standing next to the luxury car. He had been adopted by the Miles family that year, and was living the life of a pampered young master again. 4 years later, Peter knelt down and proposed to me. I have chosen you for my whole life, and we will never be apart. He married me without hesitation despite his parents' opposition. Even though he was beaten all over by his father, he endured the sweet taste in his throat and kowtowed heavily. If it weren't for Olivia Nichols, I would have died. So I must marry her. Finally they gave in and agreed for Peter to marry me, a person with no background, no looks, and even a disabled person. The wedding caused a sensation that year, and the headlines for half a month were all about this grand wedding. Peter knelt on one knee, put on my finger a 9-digit diamond ring that was the only one in the world, and promised me in front of all the guests, I will never let you down in this life. After we got married, Peter naturally took over the family business and became busier and busier, but he never neglected me. Whether at home or outside, it gives me a sense of security. At the group press conference, Peter also thanked me many times. I still remember that my wife and I went through many difficult times together. She even lost her legs to protect me. Without her, I would not have survived, let alone achieved what I have today. It is because of my wife's unconditional support and love behind me that I can go forward without worries and build my current career. When he got emotional, Peter even choked up several times. For a while, he was in the limelight, and countless reports helped Peter establish his image as a loving wife. These positive reports were enough for him to gain a foothold on the board of directors, because the group needed such positive characters for marketing and promotion. Now that I think about it, Peter brought up my flaws over and over again, probably just because the topic was easy to hype. I felt like I had just discovered Peter's true face. I was trembling all over. I felt that everywhere he touched became sticky and dirty. I couldn't stay in his presence for even a moment. I pushed open the door with an embarrassed look on my face. Peter's face flashed with surprise and panic, afraid that I might have heard what he had just said. I saw him open his mouth, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. I picked up the handbag on the sofa and turned around and left the room. I can accept everyone making fun of my scars except Peter. If it wasn't for protecting him, I wouldn't have ended up with both legs crippled. He's been sorry to me all his life. 03. Peter called me many times, but I didn't answer. Later, when I calmed down a little, I called him again, but found that his phone had been turned off. It seems that he doesn't want to pay attention to me anymore. I find it ridiculous because whenever we had a fight, no matter whose fault it was, Peter would patiently coax me until I was no longer angry. But now he has lost his patience with me and just lets me process my emotions on my own. The birthday party was held in a mountain villa. There were usually few vehicles passing by. I walked along the winding mountain road for a long time, and the contact surface of my prosthesis was worn out. Until I reached the foot of the mountain, I couldn't get a taxi, and no one answered the call on my phone. Holding on to the last glimmer of hope, I called Peter again, but as expected, his phone was turned off. I don't know if his phone was out of battery, or he just turned it off and decided not to answer my call. I called Gavin again and he answered the phone, sounding particularly attentive. "Sister-in-law, where have you been? Peter is looking for you anxiously. Today is his birthday. Please don't be angry with him." When I thought of Gavin's sarcastic tone just now, I felt a lump in my chest and felt disgusted with him. But there was no other choice at the moment, so I had to ask him to send a car to pick me up. But before I could finish my words, I heard a soft, teasing voice next to me. Obviously a female voice. "Peter, let me feed you a piece of fruit. Oh, you're making me itchy." I hung up the phone neatly. Although I know this scene is inevitable in their gatherings, Peter has promised that he will never do anything to let me down. But in the phone call just now, I clearly heard Peter's happy laughter, and he seemed to be enjoying it very much. Peter once told me that all this was just a show, and it was inevitable when socializing outside. But he promised that he would never do anything beyond the line. But now, reason told me to control my temper and trust Peter unconditionally. But my emotions made me extremely painful, and I was always conflicted. Gavin called me again, but this time I turned off the phone. The temperature dropped at night and I was shivering with cold. I didn't know how long I would have to walk before I found a taxi. Suddenly a dazzling car light was directed at me, and I was blinded. The car turned around in front and stopped next to me. The car window was rolled down, and the face of the person inside was unexpectedly familiar. Trevor Walsh, my prosthetist. "Dr. Walsh, why are you here?" I regretted saying this. Today is Peter's birthday party, and I guess he invited Trevor too. "I was wondering why you are here." Trevor opened the car door and let me get in. Before I could say anything, Trevor pointed at my legs again and said, "Can I take a look?" I felt embarrassed and Peter's disdainful voice rang in my mind again, so I didn't dare to lift my skirt. But Trevor's eyes were focused, without any disdain on his face. Well, as a prosthetist, he has seen more broken limbs than I have, so why should I be embarrassed in front of him? So I lifted my skirt and took off my prosthesis. The cross-section was worn red and had some broken skin. Trevor took out a gel from his bag and applied it on me. His palm was warm, but it was surprisingly hot when I touched it. I stepped back in shock. "Dr. Walsh, I'll do it myself." Trevor didn't force it. "With increased exercise, sweating will cause chafing. You can apply some moisturizer in advance." I nodded and made note of it. Trevor started the car, apparently intending to take me home. "Dr. Walsh, please drop me off somewhere where I can get a taxi easily. I won't waste your time." Trevor smiled gently. "It's okay. I'm already late and it's too late to go now." "I won't go. I'll just take you home first." He always has this magic that can make people around him relax and accept his kindness and tenderness without any worries. I am no exception. 04. Peter did not go home that night, but in Gavin's circle of friends, I saw Peter hugging a woman. The photo was blurry, but you could still see the intimate movements and the ambiguous smile on Peter's face. I stared at the photo in despair, trying to comfort myself that this was all fake. Peter never had much contact with other women outside, for fear that I would be unhappy if I saw it. But now the photo is clearly in front of me, and I don't know how to deceive myself. I called Peter again, and this time the call went through, but it wasn't Peter on the other end of the line. The lazy female voice spoke with lust. "Who is it? Calling so early in the morning?" My heart seemed to fall into an abyss and I couldn't utter a word. But the next second Peter snatched the phone away and explained, "Olivia? What's going on? Don't get me wrong, that was my assistant." I pulled the corners of my mouth with difficulty and revealed a bitter smile. I don't know whether I was laughing at myself for calling at a wrong time, or at Peter for using such a stupid excuse to fool me. I felt my vision blurred by tears and my words became choked up. "Aren't you coming back tonight?" Peter was a little impatient. "What's the matter?" I looked at the bowl of longevity noodles on the table, and in the steam I recalled the days when Peter and I kept each other warm. At that time, our godparents refused to even give us enough food, let alone celebrate our birthdays. But that day I learned that it was Peter's birthday, so while my godfather and godmother were out, I stood in front of the stove and cooked a bowl of noodles for Peter. That was the first time Peter had a hot meal. Even though it was so hot that it made him grimace in his mouth, Peter ate it all. Later, he was discovered by his godfather and godmother, and was naturally beaten severely. Peter hugged my bloody body and his tears fell into my neck, which was incredibly hot. Later, I cooked noodles for Peter on every birthday. Even in prison, I would ask the prison guards to borrow the kitchen. Even if Peter couldn't eat it, I would always remember it. After marrying Peter, my birthday parties became more and more extravagant. But no matter how late it is, Peter will accompany me home, watch me busy in the kitchen, and make him a bowl of noodles myself. Even though my cooking skills are not good, he still enjoys the meal. He said it was the best noodles he had ever eaten in his life. But that night, I waited until the noodles were almost clumping together. But Peter still refused to go home. He accused me of being sensitive and nosy on the other end of the phone. Everyone is here tonight, how can I leave? Can you be more understanding and considerate of me? After saying that, he hung up the phone. I sat at the dining table, looking at the bowl of noodles that had turned cold, crying with my eyes open until dawn. It wasn't until the morning light filtered into the living room that I realized Peter hadn't come home. I didn't receive another call from Peter, but instead received a call from Peter's mother. It will be the old man's 80th birthday soon, so remember to come back early. I don't know what Peter is busy with, so I can't get through to you on the phone. I said, my voice hoarse, okay, Mom. The other end was silent for a while, then spoke again. Do you remember? I already knew what she was going to say. I'll try to keep the prosthesis hidden. Peter's mother responded and hung up the phone without any extra words. Peter and I have been married for so many years, and my relationship with his family has always been lukewarm. Peter's parents never liked me from the beginning to the end. After all, my legs were disabled, and with their family background, my existence became a joke. They never agreed with Peter marrying me, but they couldn't persuade Peter. Probably the only person in the family who supported our marriage was Peter's grandfather, and he was the one who decided this matter against all odds. Peter's grandfather once said in front of everyone that I had done a favor for the Miles family, and if it weren't for me, Peter would not have survived. So the birthday gift for Grandpa Peter must not be vague. Even if I haven't slept all night, I have to cheer up and go out. There just so happens that there is a charity auction today. There aren't many items for sale, but there is a set of jade ruby, which I thought would be a perfect gift for Grandpa Peter. I called Peter again before leaving, but no one answered. I didn't want to think about the worst outcome, and just deceived myself into thinking that he had more important things to do. My prosthesis was badly worn out, and I thought no one would pay attention to me, so I traveled in a wheelchair. During the auction, there were people bidding against me all the time, as if on purpose, driving the price up to 9 figures, several times higher than the actual value. I regretfully withdrew my hand and was about to leave when I saw the cubicle door being pushed open. Peter put his arm around a beautiful woman's waist and whispered softly in her ear. Do you like it? The woman hid in Peter's arms shyly and said softly, It's too expensive. It's not expensive. Peter kissed the woman's forehead gently. It's worth it no matter how much I spend on you. I was stunned on the spot. It was like a basin of water mixed with ice cubes was poured over my head. My whole body is numb from the cold. 05. I felt as strange as if I was meeting Peter for the first time. The Peter who once took on the pressure from his family to marry me. The Peter who once proposed to me on one knee and promised that he would never let me down. And the Peter who is now gentle and considerate to other women. Which one is true? I rushed forward angrily, pushed Peter away with force, and beat him recklessly. The noise was so loud that it attracted the attention of others. When Peter saw it was me, the anger between his brows dissipated and he held my hand. Why are you here? I struggled to break free and slapped Peter in the face. I didn't hold back my strength when I slapped Peter, and a slap mark soon appeared on Peter's face. Before Peter could say anything, the woman rushed over and asked, What are you doing? She pushed me hard, and I lost control of my strength in the wheelchair and fell sideways to the ground. The blanket covering his legs slipped off, revealing his empty trouser legs. Everyone looked at him in shock, and I could vaguely hear some people talking. Is this the one from Miles' family? Is he really disabled? He doesn't even cover himself up. He looks scary. I heard that she's the daughter of a human trafficker. The girl from Miles' family was kidnapped by her parents when she was a child. I heard that she started stealing things on the street after she was kidnapped. No wonder we rarely see her. The Miles family must be ashamed of her, and brought her back to train her for a few more years. But she still smells like a poor girl. The discussions of the people around him made Peter's face become colorful. Peter's expression, which always played the role of a perfect husband, suddenly showed some cracks. When his eyes fell on the earthworm-like scars and cracks on my severed limbs, he was speechless, as if he had swallowed a fly. I sneered. "Do you feel disgusted too?" Peter finally reacted and urged the butler standing next to him coldly. "What are you looking at? Hurry up and help the lady up." He was standing not far from me, and the distance between us seemed like the Milky Way. The housekeeper helped me up, covered me with the blanket again, and pressed hard as if applying silent pressure. The woman was watching all this and couldn't help but speak up. "A cripple like you will cause trouble to Brother Peter. How much more trouble do you want to cause him?" The words sounded harsh, but she exuded the air of a proud little princess. People who are spoiled by their families always speak without restraint. If Peter wasn't kind-hearted and remembered your past relationship, how could you have married him? You are the biggest stain on his life. I blinked hard, trying to see Peter through my tears. But he just stood not far away, standing with those who were talking about me. As if in this way he could cut off all ties with me. Peter is still the superior and perfect person. But I am a stain on him in this life. It's like a constant reminder to everyone that no matter how powerful the man in power in the Miles family is now, and how many lives he holds in his hands, he was still a street thug who begged for mercy long before. "Who are you?" I took a deep breath, trying hard to hold back my tears, wanting to appear less vulnerable. The woman held Peter's arm and looked at the slap mark on his face with heartache. She turned her head and raised her chin towards me. "I'm Kate Myers." It turned out to be Kate. I've heard of the Myers daughter before. I was a childhood sweetheart of Peter. If it weren't for my accident, perhaps they would have been the most suitable couple. 06. The scene was very embarrassing outside, and Peter wanted to save face, so he booked a private room. Peter sighed tiredly, thinking that I was being impolite, and frowned and blamed me. "Why did you come out by yourself? Am I a criminal? Why can't I come out, or would it be embarrassing for you if I came out?" I was aggressive and used the sharpest words to poke Peter, trying to make him explain what was happening. But he just rubbed his brows and looked like he had nothing to say to me. Kate seemed to be enjoying the fun and looked at me coldly. "You should be content. If Peter wasn't kind-hearted, why would he marry you? You've become a laughingstock in the circle. What qualifications do you have to stay with Peter?" Peter just stood there, and instead of defending me like he did before, he remained silent. It was as if he agreed with what Kate said. I calmly touched the severed limb and said, "Because I killed someone for him and went to jail." I turned my head to look at him and asked again, "Do you think you are worthy of me?" Peter's patience had reached a certain limit. "Have you had enough of this? Aren't you embarrassed enough?" Then he turned his gaze to the housekeeper, pushed the lady back to rest. I raised my hand to stop the housekeeper's action, but looked at Kate provocatively and asked word by word, "Peter, I'm not feeling well. Do you want to go home and stay with me? I suffered from sequelae of the car accident and spent several years in prison. My health did not improve and I was always feeling unwell. Peter was worried about me, so he bought the villa next door and hired an entire medical team to stay in the villa just in case of emergency. I complained that he was making a big deal out of nothing, but Peter just said that he couldn't lose me, so he wouldn't allow anything to happen to me. So every time I was not feeling well, Peter would take it very seriously and would turn down other things, no matter how important, just to go home and be with me. But now, Peter hesitated rarely and looked at Kate. Kate smiled slightly. "Brother Peter, my parents asked you to come home for dinner. It seems that they want to cooperate on a project." Kate and I looked at Peter at the same time. Peter paused for a long time without saying anything. After a long while, he gently persuaded me. "Olivia, you should go back first. I need to take care of some company matters. This project is very important to me." After saying that, he glanced at the housekeeper, who was used to acting, and then carefully instructed, "Remember to ask a doctor to come and see you. Remember to tell me if you have any questions. He looks righteous and loyal." I looked at him as if I were looking at the devil, so strange that it made me tremble and vomit. Kate smiled triumphantly. "Sister Olivia, go back and be safe." I didn't look up at Peter again and straightened my back, as if this could hide my vulnerability and embarrassment. Kate took Peter's arm and cheered happily. "Let's go shopping before we go home and buy something to bring back to my parents." Peter smiled indulgently and said obediently, "Of course, you can do whatever you want." I watched their figures disappear from my sight, and suddenly I felt a deep sense of powerlessness and strangeness. I am helpless about the current situation and extremely disappointed with Peter's behavior. But I should also be glad. It was tonight that I completely saw through Peter. I finally made up my mind. I used to think that my feelings and dependence on Peter would be a gradual process from existence to disappearance. But the fact is that it will suddenly drop to zero at some point, or even in an instant. Just like now. 07. When I got home, the doctor was already waiting in the living room, along with an unexpected person. "Dr. Walsh, why are you here?" I tried hard to force a smile at him, but I didn't realize that it was so forced that it was even uglier than crying. The doctor wanted to examine me, but I refused, leaving Trevor standing there. Trevor was dressed casually today, as if he had rushed over after receiving a phone call, and he didn't look as calm and composed as usual. He looked me up and down as if to make sure I was okay, and breathed a sigh of relief. "I just received a call from the housekeeper saying that you were not feeling well. I thought there was something wrong with your prosthesis." Trevor was not part of Peter's medical team. He worked in a private hospital and became my prosthetist by chance. But you really can't tell from his appearance that he is a doctor. After all, Trevor's entire body weighs over 8 figures. I don't understand these luxuries, but I was still shocked when I found out about them. Can a doctor earn so much? I shook my head. Nothing. It's a pity you made such a wasted trip. I'll ask the driver to take you back. Trevor returned to his usual gentle and considerate attitude. "It's okay. I'm glad you're okay." I looked at him, but other thoughts came into my mind. "I have something, could you please help me?" Now that I have made up my mind to divorce, the first thing I have to do is to find my own place to stay. I didn't expect Trevor to be so efficient. The next day he told me that he had found a house with good value for money. Trevor took me to see it, and found that the house was equipped with many facilities for the disabled. Even if there was no one to take care of me, I could live well on my own. I didn't expect to find such a suitable house. I signed the contract with the agent and was happy to have taken such a smooth first step in my future life. I dragged Trevor to the mall for a good meal. Trevor didn't ask me why I was moving. He just said I could ask him for help if I needed it. But I know that I have already troubled him too much, and I don't want to cause him any more trouble no matter what. Trevor didn't force me, he just asked me what my plans were for the future. I was stunned for a moment, as if I knew nothing about the future. I was adopted by human traffickers when I was young, and I didn't study seriously for many years, but I did learn a lot of skills to steal things. Later, she was released from prison and married Peter. Peter never let me show up in public, so I just stayed at home doing nothing. Now it seems that I am like a useless person and cannot integrate into today's society at all. I don't know what I can do, and I don't know how to make a living as a disabled person. Trevor looked at me, as if he could see through my thoughts, and took out a leaflet from his bag. "This is a Disabled Assistance Association that our hospital has set up in collaboration with other hospitals. It mainly helps patients in difficult situations to face life. We hold activities regularly and need a manager. I think you are quite suitable. Would you like to try?" I was a little dazed, not knowing whether I should take this step to accept a new life. All along, Peter never let me show up in public. He thought he had built a palace that could shelter me from the wind and rain, and as long as I stayed in this house, I would never be exposed to the wind and rain. I don't have to face the cruel reality. I just need to stay at home and be the mistress of the Miles family quietly. The Miles mistress can never go out, but she cannot be a disabled person. Now that I think about it, Peter always prevented me from participating in various public activities simply because he didn't want others to talk about the fact that his wife was disabled. To him, I was always a disgrace. Peter can keep using me for hype, but it's another matter for me to actually stand in front of the public. And if I ask myself honestly, I also can't let it go, which is why I always avoid it. I always feel that if I keep avoiding and not facing it, I can still maintain the illusion and fragile balance in my own world. But now I am about to start a new life. Do I have to stay in my shell forever? Looking into Trevor's eyes, I nodded with determination. I want to give it a try. 08. Peter came back the day I moved. He probably felt a little guilty towards me, so he bought a huge bunch of roses. When he saw me coming downstairs, he came over carefully and said softly, "Olivia, this is for you. The roses are so beautiful. The dew drops on their petals, and the fragrance is so refreshing. But the smell is so pungent to me." I took a few steps back calmly, feeling a deep sense of powerlessness in my heart. "Peter, I'm allergic to roses." Peter looked a little surprised and quickly took the flowers away and apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Olivia. I don't know why you suddenly became allergic to roses." Peter already knew that I was allergic to roses. At the wedding, they wanted to use roses to decorate the venue, but Peter scolded them for being unprofessional. He also got angry and fired the entire team. After we got married, he often gave me flowers, but he always avoided roses. And now, Peter hasn't given me flowers for a long time, and the ones he brought me now were roses to which I am allergic. I lowered my eyes. You can tell at a glance whether someone is attentive or not. Peter coughed a few times to hide his embarrassment, and then explained, "I'll have someone order another bouquet for you." I shook my head. "That's not necessary. I'm moving away soon, so it doesn't matter whether I have this bouquet of flowers or not." I was just about to talk to him about divorce when he received another call. Seeing the incoming call alert, he glanced at me casually, then walked aside and answered the phone. "What?" "Don't worry, I'll be there soon." Peter's tone was very anxious. Seeing that I was about to say something, he quickly interrupted me and said, "Let's talk about it later. I have urgent matters to deal with in the company." Look, such poor excuses. It seems that Peter really thinks I am a fool. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Peter took out the jade ruby from the previous charity auction and said, "Look, Kate was afraid that you would misunderstand, so she asked me to return the jade ruby. If you like it, just take it." I finally laughed. It turned out that both of them thought I was a fool. Without waiting for my answer, Peter left in a hurry. With that impatient and urgent look, who couldn't tell that he was going to find Kate? I really wanted to control my tears and make myself appear more indifferent, but the tears kept flowing out. Peter also saw my tears, but that didn't stop him. He just said, "Olivia, wait for me, I'll be back." "But I don't want to wait for you anymore." Peter finally extinguished my last bit of hope with his own hands, and I really want to thank him. "Thank you for not firmly choosing me from the beginning to the end, otherwise I might not have the heart to leave him." I took one last look at the bedroom and saw our wedding photo on the bedside table. I paused for a few seconds, then walked forward and pulled out the photo. He tore off his own half. It was not easy to take these wedding photos. At that time, Peter's parents still did not agree with us being together, and their attitude was very firm. Peter's parents refused to come when the family photo was taken, and it was only after Peter's grandfather spoke up that they came. When we were taking wedding photos, his parents were standing by and making sarcastic remarks. It made me not think about it at all. Later, Peter noticed this and took me to take another set of wedding photos, just the two of us. He had informed the photographer and other staff members in advance, and there was nothing that made me unhappy. At that time, I was smiling sweetly and happily in the wedding photos, as if I had nothing to fear as long as Peter was by my side. Now all that is gone. 09. I didn't wait for Peter to come back. Later I heard from Peter's assistant that Kate was not careful when she went downstairs and fell down the stairs. She was in so much pain that she refused to go to the hospital and insisted that Peter go. Peter is really enthusiastic and he is everywhere. But I don't care anymore. I don't have much stuff and there's not much I can take away. When Trevor came to pick me up, I had only one suitcase with me. "That's just a few things." Trevor laughed. "I thought you girls would have a lot of stuff." I looked back at the villa and smiled. "It's not mine anyway, so I'll just leave it here if I can't take it with me." Trevor drove me back to my new apartment, which he had already hired someone to clean. The apartment is not big, but it is clean and tidy, and the facilities are also complete. I will always be grateful to Trevor. Trevor didn't think it was a big deal. "You'll be working here soon anyway, so it's okay for the boss to be nice to his employees. Your company has such good benefits, so I have to work hard." I showed Trevor the information I had carefully researched a few days ago, which was densely marked with my own thoughts and experiences. Trevor was shocked. "Why did you prepare so much? This is my first real job, and I don't want to do it half-heartedly." These days I have carefully checked the information of Trevor's private hospital and the Disabled Persons Assistance Association, and found that this association is well run and even has close cooperation with the local Disabled Persons Federation, and has actually helped many disabled people adapt to society. In fact, there is no need for me to help manage it, but I know that this is an important step for Trevor to help me take a new step in my life. So I have to do it well no matter what. The association has recently launched a new series of activities called sharing sessions, where many people with disabilities are invited to share their experiences and encourage more people to get out of difficult situations and adapt to a new life. The event was held in a park. As it was a weekend, there were a lot of people and a lot of media. I wore a prosthesis when I went out this time, but I was still afraid of the strange looks from people around me, so I wore a long skirt to cover it up. But in this event, I saw many people generously showing off their prosthetic limbs, and some even dressed up with prosthetic limbs, paired with cool makeup and a bit of the mechanical beauty of bionic people. I breathed a sigh of relief. It turns out that I really don't need to care about other people's eyes, and can really live such an easy life. After the event officially started, Trevor stepped forward to give a speech. He was tall and handsome, and the audience cheered as he went on stage. Trevor's handsome face flushed and he greeted everyone gently. I am very happy to host such an event. I know that everyone here has faced a dark period in life. Many people cannot bear such a sudden blow and have never recovered from it. He looked around. There were many people present, but Trevor's eyes were fixed on me. But people always have to accumulate strength in loneliness and endure a period of unknown hardship. Then, like a train exiting a tunnel, gentleness and light suddenly hit you, and you will find that this world is more friendly than you imagined. Trevor's speeches are always inspiring and empowering. It seems that under his guidance, all difficulties and hardships can be overcome. I was listening quietly in the audience and couldn't help but shed tears. There is another session after the sharing session for everyone to share their own stories. But most of them kept their heads down and refused to speak, unwilling to open their hearts. They stubbornly locked themselves in a small room and resisted everything with silence. I don't know where I got the courage from, but I stood up on my own initiative. However, I was so nervous that I couldn't speak. Trevor stood aside, looking at me gently but firmly. I suddenly felt relieved. I smiled at the volunteer and asked for a pair of scissors. The long skirt was cut in an instant, revealing the prosthetic legs. Before today, I didn't dare to face my prosthesis and was very resistant to it. I thought about myself when I used to be alone in my room, and I couldn't help but feel a lump in my throat. I feel disgusting myself, and my former lover also finds me disgusting. Everyone around was silent, and I noticed a girl wiping away tears. But I don't think so today. I showed my prosthesis to everyone generously. I think the prosthesis Dr. Walsh chose for me is very beautiful. None of us knew that an accident would happen. Unfortunately, it happened to us, but luckily we are still alive. As long as we are alive, there is hope. No matter how painful it is now, time will always heal the pain. A person's life is neither short nor long, so we should always be happy and enjoy life. Trevor's eyes were fixed on me, and he took the lead in applauding. With my introduction, everyone opened up and started introducing themselves in a low voice. Some people still refuse to speak, but I believe that one day they will be able to accept themselves. The event that day was very successful. The media captured many wonderful scenes and prepared to push them out together with the local Disabled Persons Federation as promotional materials. The photo of me showing my prosthetic limb in public unexpectedly became popular. 10. When Peter called me, I was in the conference room meeting with everyone to summarize the sharing session. I saw the familiar incoming call alert and hung up the phone. But he wouldn't give in, so I had to walk out the door to answer the phone. It was the first time that Peter got angry at me without restraint, and it took almost all of his strength to control his anger. Why on earth do you participate in this kind of activity? What's wrong with this kind of activity? What's the point of showing up like this? Do you know what they say about you? They say you have no legs and are a cripple. I was very confused. I am disabled, what's the problem? Peter interrupted me hastily, as if he couldn't accept such words. No. People will make fun of you and Miles's family. I didn't think so. It doesn't matter, Peter. I'm not worried. You're just worried about losing face. Peter seemed to be struck by my heart, and was incapable of getting angry. I didn't. I just don't want to see others say that about you. I also don't want others to say that my wife is disabled. I don't want to get entangled with him anymore. Then let's get a divorce so I won't be a burden to you anymore. Peter was stunned. What do you mean? I was also stunned. Didn't he know yet? I've been away for so long and he has never come home once. Otherwise he would have seen the divorce agreement on the coffee table in the living room. I came back to my senses and smiled. Where have you been these days? Haven't you been home? Peter naturally felt guilty, but he still controlled his temper and coaxed me. Olivia, stop it. I asked someone to take down the news. If this kind of photo gets out, it will be bad for the reputation of the Miles family. But I laughed out of anger. There were so many scandalous photos of Peter before, whether they were shown to me by the housekeeper or emailed to me by other restless lovers. I don't know how many of them I've seen. But I was stupid enough to believe Peter at that time. He loves me and will never have an affair with anyone else. I don't know how serious the impact will be if those photos are leaked. Now he is holding on to this photo of mine. I really don't understand what Peter is thinking. Whatever you want to do, I have nothing to say to you. Peter calmed down unexpectedly. Are you really going to divorce me? Really? I said calmly. I will never bother you. You've really become more capable. I don't know what you can do without me. Peter hung up the phone and left a snort, as if mocking my arrogance. 11. Peter hasn't contacted me since I last spoke to him on the phone. Our relationship seemed to be broken. My life gradually got back on track, and with Trevor's help I quickly adapted to the work at the Disabled Persons Association. I had just finished the work at hand when I received a call from Peter's mother, complaining on the phone why I hadn't come yet. I frowned. What did you say? Peter's mother was very impatient. The old man is having a birthday party today. Why haven't you come yet? Do you know any manners? I was silent for a moment, guessing that Peter had not yet told his parents about our divorce. I was about to speak when Peter's mother just told me to come as soon as possible and hung up the phone. I remembered how Peter's grandfather had taken care of Peter and me before, and I didn't want to make him unhappy on his birthday. So I asked for leave from Trevor and took a taxi to Miles' house. Grandpa Peter's birthday party was very grand. Before the party started, there were already many people in the villa and the garden. When they saw me come in, everyone's eyes fell on me. Since I started working at the Disabled Persons Association, I found that other people's opinions are not that important. In addition, I often have to help patients with psychological problems. In order to give them the courage to face themselves, I always show them my prosthesis and tell them that it is cool, and they don't have to worry about other people's opinions. This time I came directly, without any makeup or long skirt, just a plain t-shirt and shorts. The prosthesis is clearly displayed in front of the guests. I heard some people talking about, this is the first time I've seen one. This prosthesis looks a bit scary. So she's disabled. Are the Miles family willing to let her in? How could Peter, a man of many talents, marry such a disabled woman? The discussion among the crowd stopped after Grandpa Peter came forward. I felt no burden and walked over to sincerely wish him. Grandpa, may you be blessed with great fortune and live as long as the southern mountains. Peter's grandfather smiled and nodded. Why didn't Peter come with you? I looked around but didn't see Peter, so I didn't dare say anything and just smiled. He waved his hand and didn't let anyone else help him. Instead, he waved at me kindly. Come here, help me sit in the garden. There is a small lake on the east side of the garden. I helped Grandpa Peter sit down by the lake. The wind blew gently, creating ripples on the surface of the lake. Grandpa Peter looked at me kindly, then stared at my prosthesis. I was worried that the prosthesis would have too much impact on the elderly, so I quickly turned my foot away. Peter's grandfather sighed. You are a good boy. If it weren't for you, Peter would be dead now. I have no complaints about saving Peter. Even today, I don't regret the decision I made at all. But no one expected that things would turn out like this. I lowered my head, not knowing whether I should tell Grandpa Peter about the divorce. Peter's grandfather paused for a few seconds and sighed. Fortunately, Peter didn't let you down. I thought he married you for the shares, but after so many years, I know that Peter is sincere to you. My brain seemed to be stuck, and I couldn't get it to work. I asked hesitantly, what shares? It turned out that Peter's parents didn't agree with me being with him, but Peter's grandfather felt that I lost my legs for Peter, and it would be inhumane if the Miles family didn't treat me well. Seeing that Peter was deeply in love with me and worried that Jane's father and Peter's mother would continue to obstruct him, Peter's grandfather promised that Peter would inherit his shares after I married him, so that he could truly inherit the Miles family business. It turns out that Peter and I are married. It's for shares. But I still naively thought that he really loved me and was really willing to marry me regardless of the world's opinion. Turned out to be for shares. 12. When Peter and Kate arrived at the banquet, I had already said goodbye to Peter's grandfather. When I met Peter's gaze at the door, it felt like a different day. The sudden truth I learned made me feel that everything about Peter seemed fake and powerless. Peter saw me and frowned. "What are you doing here?" Then he thought of something and frowned even more tightly. "Are you here to mess things up?" Before I could say anything, Peter said impatiently, "It's been so long, my patience is limited, don't challenge my limit." Kate took Peter's arm and added fuel to the fire. "Brother Peter already has a female companion today, Sister Olivia. You can go back now." After that, she looked me up and down with a look of contempt. As expected. "You are really useless without Brother Peter. You came here dressed like this. Aren't you afraid of being embarrassed?" The two of them were pointing their guns at me like this, but I didn't feel a bit of anger in my heart. I only felt deep powerlessness and exhaustion. I closed my eyes and said patiently, "I haven't told Grandpa about our divorce, but we have to get a divorce. You should explain it to them yourself." I looked up at Peter. We were with each other for a full 16 years, from the age of 10 to 26. Even more time spent with parents. For Peter, love had long since turned into family affection, and became an important and inseparable part of each other's lives. I was willing to give my life for Peter back then, and I will be willing to give anything for Peter in the future. I am an orphan without father or mother. The most precious things in my life are my life and my sincerity. I am willing to dedicate my life to Peter. I really would like to, but he ignored my sincerity and trampled on it cruelly. From the moment Peter cheated, all the dramatic dreams, all the tenderness, thoughtfulness, and sweet vows disappeared. The process of being disheartened is the most difficult to endure. Various speculations arise, but one still has hidden hopes in one's heart. One changes one's bottom line again and again, until one's heart becomes cold and one has no choice but to say goodbye after being extremely disappointed. "Peter, I asked my grandfather for you. The shares will not be taken back after they are transferred to you." I spoke word by word in front of Peter's pale face. "I will give you the freedom you want." After saying this, I felt a lot more relaxed. I no longer had to pretend to be considerate and gentle, no longer had to be stuck at home as a vase-like mistress of the Miles family, and no longer had to endure Peter's repeated fooling and betrayal. I turned and left. Peter grabbed my wrist regardless. "Olivia, what are you doing?" His tone revealed an unprecedented panic, as if he let go of me, I would be lost in the crowd and disappear again. I used force to pry his fingers apart. "Don't make it too awkward. We are all adults. We should separate gracefully." Peter still held my hand, his eyes reddened. "You can't leave me. We have never been apart for so many years. How can you abandon me like this?" I smiled slightly and said with relief, "You were the one who left me first." As we supported each other on the road together, Peter's pace became faster and faster, and he had already left me behind. It was obvious that all of this was his own doing, but now he is denying anything. Such belated affection is so disgusting that it makes me want to laugh. I don't understand what Peter is thinking. He obviously dislikes me appearing around him, and dislikes me showing up in public. He was dissatisfied with everything about me. But just when I let go and was about to let him go free, Peter suddenly changed his mind. He began to stop me regardless of the occasion, and express his affection for me with gestures and excitement. It annoys me so much. I couldn't help but ask him, "Don't you have anything to do all day? Why do you have to bother me? Did Grandpa take back your shares?" When the issue of shares was mentioned, Peter's eyes dodged, with a look of panic and nervousness on his face, as if he had been exposed. But no matter whether he really wanted to marry me or married me because of the shares, it doesn't matter to me anymore. I looked at Peter's slovenly appearance and sighed helplessly. We can't go back to the past. A broken mirror cannot be mended. No matter how hard you try, you can't repair the crack. Peter cried like a kid who lost his favorite toy. He grabbed my clothes and asked me in a low voice like he used to, "Why don't you love me anymore?" He recalled the difficult times many years ago when we supported each other. At that time, we couldn't steal money on the streets, so our godparents wouldn't let us eat. The half-grown boy would faint from hunger every night. I sneaked into the kitchen to steal things, but I didn't dare steal too much for fear of being discovered by my godfather and godmother. I didn't dare to eat it myself because there was only a little bit and I had to leave it for Peter. At that time, Peter had been tortured by life and had matured too early, and his tears fell one by one on the dry and hard steamed buns. He choked up and said, "We will be together forever. Vows are always precious. Too bad it's worthless now." I didn't bother with Peter anymore and turned away. Peter burst into tears. "You loved me so much that you were willing to kill someone and go to jail for me. Is all this fake?" I didn't look back, I just said, "Peter, I killed people to escape from that hell. Compared to you, I think I am more important." Peter was stunned. After a long while, he broke down and cried, "Impossible. You did it for me. You love me the most. You killed people for me." I didn't respond to him again. 14. I haven't seen Peter since then. With Trevor's help, I started studying again. I didn't have the opportunity to go to school in the past because my godparents thought that girls didn't need to study, and that it was enough for them to just be able to give birth to children. So I dropped out of school after only junior high school. It is very difficult for me to study again. There are many knowledge points that I don't understand and I can't learn them by self-study. Trevor hired a tutor for me, but the fee was very expensive and I didn't dare to accept it for fear of causing trouble for Trevor again. Trevor didn't agree. He smiled and said, "Then when you work for me in the future, I will exploit you." I understand Trevor's feelings. Even though he doesn't say it, I know it. No one is nice to others for no reason. But Trevor never said anything, maintained a friendship with me, and stayed with me, helping me in every way. But he knew his limits so well that I couldn't even say no. I could only accept his kindness with guilt. On the eve of my preparation to take the adult college entrance examination, Trevor brought me good news. Without telling me, he uploaded my DNA to the gene bank and compared it with the national database of missing children. In fact, there is not much hope because I was still very young when I got lost, and my parents may not have been able to help me enter the data. But it just happened that the police came to promote it that year, and my parents thought it made sense, so they uploaded the data when I was a child. Trevor found my parents' information, but although it was a happy thing, his expression was full of sadness. "It's a pity that your parents are already dead. My parents are ordinary university professors. One time when my mother went to the street to buy vegetables, she accidentally let go of my hand, and as a result, I was abducted by human traffickers. Since then, my mother has been brooding over it, believing that it was her fault that I was abducted, and she died of depression not long after. My father insisted on looking for me, but unfortunately he was old, and coupled with traveling all over the country, he passed away a few years ago due to overwork. Before they died, they were still concerned about me and never gave up looking for me. They left all their savings to lawyers and entrusted them to continue searching for me. Olivia, there are still people who love you. They looked forward to your birth as if it were a gift, and they didn't give up looking for you even after you got lost." Trevor looked at me, who was crying so hard that I couldn't catch my breath, and comforted me in a gentle voice. "When you finish your exams, I'll go back with you to visit the graves, okay?" 15. Trevor was more considerate and attentive than I thought. He had already sent someone to sweep my parents' graves before he even asked me. There were some faded photos on the tombstones, revealing facial features that were somewhat similar to mine. So these are my parents. Although I have no memory of their appearance, our natural blood relationship still closely connects us. I knelt in front of my parents' tombstone and cried bitterly. If I had escaped earlier, maybe I could have seen my father for the last time. If I had not been so naughty when I was a child, perhaps I would not have gotten lost, and my mother would not have died of depression. But there are not so many ifs in the world. Sometimes I thought it was just a farewell, but unexpectedly it turned out to be a separation of life and death. Before leaving, I suddenly held Trevor's hand and interlocked our fingers. Trevor was a little surprised, But he took the initiative and held my hand tightly. I looked at the photo on the tombstone and smiled softly. Mom and Dad, I have found someone who can accompany me for the rest of my life. I wonder if you will know this in your afterlife. 16. On the day Trevor and I got married, the hotel staff said someone was looking for me. I was a little confused but still walked out. Outside the corridor, Peter was sitting in a wheelchair looking skinny. How did you become like this? I was a little surprised and my eyes fell on his empty legs, feeling even more surprised. I haven't asked about Peter's news in the past few years, so naturally I didn't know he had become like this. I passed the adult college entrance examination and was admitted to university, and Trevor accompanied me to study for 4 years. Unexpectedly, I was extremely good at studying and was successfully admitted to graduate school. I had originally planned to continue my studies, but Trevor couldn't wait any longer, and he gritted his teeth and brought me back from City B to get married, saying that he would feel uneasy if we didn't get married. The wedding was attended by all the familiar friends and relatives. Peter got the news from somewhere and even came. I had a car accident 2 years ago. Peter forced out a smile that was uglier than crying. This is your retribution for me. I shook my head seriously. I have never thought of taking revenge on you. Just let go and live your own life. Peter smiled bitterly. You probably don't like me anymore after all I've become like this. I don't look down on you, I just think there's no need to focus on you. I have more important things to do. Rather than laughing at his miserable plight, I think what Peter cares about most is my indifference to him. Peter was the only one I had eyes for. I was willing to give my life for him. But now I have everything in my world except him. Peter was still not giving up and murmured behind him. Do you still love me? Are you still willing to be with me? I have become a cripple too, we are the same now. It turns out that in Peter's eyes, no matter how outstanding I am still a cripple. I suddenly laughed. I have a better choice, but it's not you. I closed the door behind me and threw myself into Trevor's arms. The moment our skin touched, I felt like I owned the whole world.